Hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to show you the best ball striking tip that I've ever received. It completely changed my ball striking, and there's no better man in the world than the guy to my left, Mr. Jeff Ritter, to show us about this concept. Jeff, appreciate you being here today.
Yeah, absolutely, bud.
Thank you for coming out. And in today's video, there's two drills that I've seen you do with your students to really help them strike the ball better that we're going to go through that we haven't talked about on this channel yet. Here today, we've got the 4 balls. Give you a little sneak peek. We got a little wood piece that we're going to use. But before we dive into that, Jeff, when I was a young man like you growing up in Pennsylvania, right, I used to golf okay. And I was very inconsistent day to day when I would go play. And I always had this concept when I would go out that my low point, right, that my club was supposed to sort of hit the ball and ground at the same time. I didn't really watch golf like instruction stuff. I would see the guys playing on TV. I never had any lessons. And I always thought, okay, let me get this club down in line with the golf ball on the ground. And that was sort of the low point of my swing. And I came across a video one day that explained that the low point of the swing was not actually at the golf ball, but in fact, it was several inches in front of the ball.
Right.
I thought, oh, that's interesting. And so when I started watching the players on TV, I started paying more attention, right? I thought, son of a gun, their club's going down, hitting the golf ball and take a divot in front of the ball. I was never able to do that. I always like pick it off the turf, no divot, no compression. And almost immediately that intention change and that concept that I learned totally changed my ball striker. And so my hope for you watching this today, if you were in the same boat that I was to use the drills and feels that we're going to go through with Jeff to help you have that same thing for you, where you can have feels to compress the ball day in and day out. Now, Jeff, why don't we switch spots here for a second? And low point, first things first. We've got those 4 golf balls there, right? So conceptually, let's go through where we want the low point of the swing to be. Then we'll kind of, how are we going to get there?
Right.
What are the drills and feels? Then we'll work through our 2 drills.
Well, I think the big thing here for the people at home is that realize that, most of the people I work with, recreational golfers, they've got plenty of coordination. They got plenty of good athleticism. They just don't know what to do. They don't have the right concept of how to play the game. So no matter what they try, it doesn't pan out. So we use coaching terms like low point. But the big thing is your golf swing's a circle. The circle has to touch the ground somewhere. Where the circle touches the ground, that's the low point. And of course, if we're trying to hit a solid golf shot that travels somewhere, I want to hit ball first instead of ground first.
Yeah.
So I'm caving in the dirt way back here. This thing's not gonna go anywhere. So one of the things I do with my students, and I'm always trying to compare them to tour pros, I have a bunch of video clips of just impact. And I'll show them 4 or 5 players and say, where is the club hitting the ground, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are amazed that it's way up here. Like they make the assumption that they're actually hitting the ball and the ground together. And some people actually think you're hitting the ground first, which couldn't be further from the truth, right?
Yeah. Hey guys, if you're watching today's video and you enjoy the tips, but you really want to take your game to a whole nother level, my friends here at Performance Golf are hosting beautiful 2-day immersive golf schools with the best golf coaches in the world, all around the United States. I find a lot of golfers come in to see us and they're really not able to identify and fix their real root cause. And usually there's like 4 or 5 main swing issues we have, but finding the real one main root flaw that can domino effect and fix all the rest of the pieces is really the thing that makes or breaks someone's improvement. So if you want to make like 1 or 2 years worth of improvements in 2 days, I highly recommend you check out my friends at Performance Golf, these golf schools down below. Click the link down there, see if there's still a spot left in a location that works for you. It could be the thing that transforms your game. Look forward to having an awesome experience.
So the big thing with golf is that when we set up our swing, your lead hand is your main connecting point to the club. So there's some schools of thought that would say, well, the center of the swing would then be your lead shoulder joint, right? So if this is the center, right below that center point, that would be the bottom of the arc, right?
Right below like your shoulder.
Below your shoulder.
Okay.
Right. So for most shots, we could also say, well, the shoulder and the lead heel, they generally line up pretty nicely. So when we're measuring ball position, we're measuring from the swing center. In this case, we're going to use the lead heel just because it's easier to see on camera.
Okay.
So basically, if I want this club hitting a little bit down, as we do when the ball's on the ground, well, then I have to move the ball to some degree behind that swing center.
Okay.
And so I think that a good rule of thumb, just to keep things simple, is about a club head width inside the lead heel. That might be 2 to 3 balls, depending on what school of thought you're working with.
Okay.
But that's going to ensure as the club head and the shaft line up with the lead arm below the swing center, we're catching the ball with a slight downward strike. And then when the shaft and arm line up, that's where the divot's presented, and that's why the divot's stretching on the target side of the ball.
Okay, so part one of this is actually, hey, having the ball in the right spot relative to
Right.
that shoulder and low point.
Absolutely.
Gotcha. Let's assume we have that good. We've got that 3 balls or so inside. Let's assume decent setup. Let's kind of assume decent backswing,
Right.
right? In terms of, okay, I've got the setup good. I get the concept, low point in front. What are some of the things that I'm going to feel? Like, what is my body doing? What am I trying to feel to get that club to actually hit the ground in front?
Right. When you look at golfers, I think in general, we see like the same pattern on the lesson tee over and over and over again. There's not a million different patterns. There's a couple basic patterns that we see pretty consistently. And I would say that by and large, golfers who struggle, who are high handicap players, they don't turn enough on this side of the swing and they don't shift enough on that side of the swing.
Definitely.
So if we're assuming that the backswing is kind of dialed in for the folks at home, we have to make sure that we're getting our weight solidly on this forward foot. So weight forward, right, is one mechanism that helps us shift the low point forward. So if there's a golfer who thinks that they're supposed to hit the ball, right, and the ground together, or if they think they have to get underneath the ball, generally they're going to be throwing their weight to their trail foot because they're trying to get the ball up in the air. But these golf clubs, they've got this beautiful amount of loft that's designed to get it up in the air for you.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the club is literally designed with the forward lean.
Yeah.
Right. So if we can just use the club the way it was designed, well, then it'll be really easy to get a little forward lean if I had my weight forward and if I had my hands a little bit forward too.
Yeah.
Right. So my hands, they're traveling towards my lead foot. There's a lot of ways we can describe this. My hands are traveling past my field of vision if they're not staying back here. So weight forward, hands forward, as long as the ball's in the right spot, now the low point's full.
Hands past the field of vision.
Yeah.
Very
Hands are passing my field of vision in theory. Right?
Yeah,
That's the feeling, right?
Yeah.
That I'm going for, as opposed to leaving my hands somewhere back here over my trail foot while my weight's back there too.
Awesome little point you put in there, which is that I think a lot of us think that we've got unique individual problems with our golf swing, when in fact 80 to 90% of us struggle with basically the same things, which means if someone's watching this and struggling with contact, odds are very high they're living in this camp. Now, we've got those 4 golf balls down there, Jeff. We know we want to have the weight forward. We want to get the hands past the sort of center of our field. If I love that. What is the concept of the 4 golf balls? Why do we have those there?
Well, when I work with my students, we work on making a lot of rehearsal swings. We're trying to rehearse evidence that this is actually going to work. We're trying to see something that shows us that if I walk up to this ball, I can swing with confidence because my rehearsal showed me that I'm going to be creating some of the impact dynamics that we're looking for. So one thing we like to do is we sit up next to the ball and we try and just brush the grass on the target side of the ball.
Yes.
Sometimes that's not enough, right? So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, what if we had to hit not one ball, but all 4 of these balls? Which means I would have to get the low point stretching down the target line quite a bit longer.
Yeah.
And to get to ball number 4, where does my weight have to be? Where do my hands have to be? What does the length of my arms look like? There's nothing that is keeping my weight on my backside. There's nothing that keeping the handle of the club, back on this side of the ball, right?
Yeah.
So we're just trying to exaggerate some ideas that are intentional towards getting the low point stretching towards the target. And if you go try and strike all 4 balls, the only way you can do it is to really be aggressive towards weight forward, handle forward, arm stretching out towards the target.
So good, dude. Collecting all 4 golf balls. Now, on top of that, to put a little kind of increase the feels maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
I also saw you in one of your clips with your students. These are great clips you have during your lessons. They're very, very cool. You had a little block here, right? You had a little accident with it, but we had a little wooden block that I think you were using to help exaggerate those feels we just mentioned. And so if someone at home has something similar to that, maybe if they don't have a wooden block, you can use a golf club, but just sort of having something to push towards the target, I assume is kind of the goal here.
That's right. So, if somebody didn't have the block, you could just do a ball pushing exercise, right?
Okay.
So we're all watching golf on TV during the weekend. We're hanging out in our socks in front of the TV set. Just put a ball on the ground, put your weight a little bit forward, get the handle forward, and then just gently roll the ball along your carpet so your arms are getting the full extension. So we're not trying to swing, we're not trying to hit a shot. We're just trying to create a little bit of the sensation of weight forward, handle forward, arms extended. That would be if you didn't have a block.
Okay.
Right? If you can grab yourself a 2x4 somewhere around the house, the garage, pick one up at local hardware store. I feel like the weight of the block,
Yes.
really is helpful for understanding how you have to apply pressure, right, to move the block or the board in that direction. So it just gives me a little bit of resistance. Weight forward, hands forward. From here, I'm going to keep driving my way forward. I'm going to try and scoot this block as far away from me as possible. And when I'm doing that, you'll notice how I'm really lengthening the travel of the handle of the club.
Yeah.
We may call this a long arc follow through. So if we're looking at the handle position relative to the arc of the swing, I'm really trying to feel like the handle of the club is stretching away from my spine as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
So if a golfer is hitting a ball too high because they're increasing the loft, well, we need to try and get loft off the face by delivering the club according to its design. We need to get the low point forward. Well, the weight's got to be forward, the handle's got to be forward, the arms have to go to full extension.
Yeah. And I notice as you're doing that, and also that golfer that's hit it too high, that too high for them would be correlated with also too short, too weak, and probably inconsistent direction. I notice when you do that, Jeff, you can do that again. As your weight's going forward, the arms are extending, you're really making sure that head is staying back.
Right.
And there's some nice body motions there, right? So you're not going head forward with the arms.
Right.
That's a little bit of extension there.
Yeah, so basically, in our follow through, we need a couple of things, right? And I would say, just to keep things simple, from a weight forward position, we got to turn in the direction we're going.
Yeah.
We have to have a little bit of a tilt towards the ground because the ball's on the ground. But then we also have this component known as extension, right? So if I'm bent forward, we call that a forward flex. If I'm doing the wave at a football game back in the 80s, now I'm in extension, right? So I like to get my students into their follow through using two basic cues. Number one, we like to say belt before buttons, right? So if I'm extending my hips, extending my spine, my weight's forward, my belt line is closer to the target than the buttons of my shirt and also my nose or my face, right?
Belt before buttons.
Belt before buttons, right?
Very
If you
good.
think about, the little old man at the club who's having a hard time breaking 100, he's coming through that way,
Yeah.
right? Because he thinks he has to stay down to make good contact. We're actually trying to feel like we're launching up a little bit and really extending our body
Yeah.
through the golf shot. The other thing I like to do
Yeah.
right, is, especially with kids, of course I do this with adults as well, I teach what I call the hero finish. Right? So think about a superhero wearing a cape. Like what kind of posture would you be in? You wouldn't have like your shoulders slumped. You wouldn't have your belt line withdrawn. It would be chest out, shoulders back, hips up and forward. So I'll have people hit shots and I'll say, hold your finish. And then tell me if you feel like you could pull off wearing a cape.
Yeah, I like that a
Right?
lot.
So hit and hold, check and correct, little cues to really help people with these basic ideas.
When I went through this the first time, I didn't know all these things. I learned the concept of moving the low point forward and kind of learned the hard way. The goal of this is to understand that concept when you're watching this to hit the ball solid, but we're sort of giving you now a cheat code as to do it.
That's right.
The more you do these pieces, weight forward, arms, let's say away or extended with those body motions, this will be easier and easier and easier to do. And if you're not getting the low point forward enough, odds are that you're not doing one, two, or all three of these motions.
That's right. That's right. And this is a skill you can just learn over time, practice at home, get more empowered, become more comfortable with it. Go to the golf course. Maybe initially don't worry about what the outcome is with the ball flight. Just see if you can't get consistent with getting the low point forward,
Yeah.
cutting the grass without ruining the yard.
Another one, Jeff. Come on,
Right.
you're gonna roll.
Like the leading
love it.
edge of your club, it's like the blade of a lawnmower, right?
Yeah.
When the handle's forward, the blade's engaged, you can cut the grass. If the handle's back, right, like a bunker shot, we're using the bounce to try and avoid digging. So if you find yourself getting the handle forward, but you are taking big chunks of dirt,
Yeah.
well, now you're not doing a good job of mowing the yard. You can get fired. You're not going to be asked back there to get your $20, right? So if we can make some real rehearsal swings, cutting the grass without ruining the yard, belt before buttons, right? Ball first contact, shallow divot. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, and obviously you do that beautifully presented, good swing.
Yeah.
Awesome as always. Obviously Jeff does that very well. He's an expert at this, but both of us learned this right through doing it. And so I love the collecting the 4 golf balls. I think that can be an instant game changer for you. Having some weight that you move away with the wooden block and just understanding that. If you want to check out Jeff, the golf schools with Performance Golf, awesome, all over the country. Jeff does them out on the West Coast, but they're all over the place. We'll put a link down below if you want to check that out. Thank you for watching. Any questions, leave us a comment down below.